Evening, everyone. Welcome to Town of Islip Planning Board for Wednesday, March 6, 2024. I ask everyone to please stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Two housekeeping matters. If you're here for item number 3 on the agenda, which is JML Construction Corporation, that will not be heard this evening. And if you're here from item number 6 on the agenda, Tom Farrell, that will also not be heard this evening. Just a reminder to everyone, if you are an applicant, to keep your presentations to 30 minutes or less. We'll be kind enough to remind you as you're getting close to that time. If you're a member of the public or the community who would like to speak on an application, there are yellow cards on the table over here. Please fill one out. And we will call you during that presentation. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. First item on the agenda, Planning Board application, public hearing, A2 125 West Main LLC, PB 2024-001, northwest corner of West Main Street, State Route 27A and Smith Avenue, Bayshore, 125 West Main Street. Applicant requests a modification of Planning Board special permit conditions associated with PB 2008-015 in order to comply with the most recent approved site plan and modify the color of the rear facade. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of this application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Steve Bertolino, 130 West Main Street, East Islip, for the applicant. To keep this as short as possible, under the 30 minutes, of course, we have an approximately 12,974 square foot building. It's improved, lot size improved by a 9,619 square foot building, 1 story. There are 5 commercial spaces on the property. The owner bought it about 3 years ago. He's re-tenanting it, revitalizing it, and bringing it up to where Bayshore should be. We're here tonight specifically for the restaurant on the corner. And in 2008, the planning board granted a special permit for a 60-seat restaurant. We're here tonight for the applicant going to a 30-seat restaurant. So we're actually asking for a 50% reduction from what we're asking the board to null and void in the 2008 special permit conditions and grant us the new special conditions tonight. With respect to parking, most of the parking was addressed back in 2023 when one tenant, the physical therapy that's currently building out now, they were here in front of this board, and the 76 parking spaces that were required was granted down to 0. Now, when we did the 76 spaces at that time, we included what would have been full tenant occupied the building. So I believe this is the last space that we're looking for. And the restaurant use, would require approximately 10 spaces under the town code, 30 seats, and we have none provided. But again, I think this was addressed by the board. I just want the board to know why I'm not addressing it. In addition, you have some landscape relaxations that were also granted by the board in 2023. As part of this application, there's like a little alcove on Smith Street behind it. Behind the main building that you see from Main Street is like a little alcove that brings you to unit number 5 and also accesses unit number 4, which is a physical therapy. That's where we're proposing to put this landscaping. So it will not be visible from Main Street, but it will be visible from Smith Street off to the side. So that's another reason why you don't see the landscaping as part of this application. So really, the reason that we're here tonight is just to, how should we say, reaffirm this corner tenant as a restaurant use going down to 30 seats. And then we get to the facade of the building, which is the main part of the application. So we're going to completely redo the coloring of the facade. I never really thought of this board as an architectural review board, and we generally went to planning to go with the colors. But I understand that there's been some concern as the color was submitted as black, and that's been done away with. I have in front of you this board here. It's kind of hard to see. So what we're looking for is more of like a softer gray instead of the black. You look at the walls in this room that we're all present in, minus the light show. You can kind of see the soft gray that we're going for. We're looking to put some of the signage in black and then have some white lettering on that. In the alternative, we would submit that we could also do the facade in more of a white. along Main Street, and then go down the side of Smith Street also in white. And then we would have that little alcove area in the back in a more darker gray to give it some two-tone. And just to be clear to the board, the applicant is not looking to re-facade the building. We're simply looking to paint it. The front of the building is brick, and that will be painted. And then the back where the alcove area has some brick and some cinder block texture to it. And that's really the main part of the application. If the board has any questions, I'm here to answer them. The applicant is here, the architect is here. But I wanted to keep it short and sweet because I know the board heard primarily about this property just a little under a year ago.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Brown quickly, then to you, Ms. Wozniak.
Yeah, the second rendition you showed us with the lighter colors, I mean, I would definitely be in favor of that. It's a nice looking building.
Well, Mr. Brown, like I said, I just don't know if this board is actually going to choose the color or defer to the applicant to work with the planning department as we normally do. But I want to let the board know that we are open to working to that, and we'd prefer the gray. And if the board and the department feels that the white is better, well, so be it.
I was just expressing my opinion.
We have no cards. Anybody coming late wish to be heard on this application? Seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak, but I'm also going to echo Mr. Brown's comments that I do like the lighter color much better.
The property is located on the northwest corner of West Main Street and Smith Avenue in Bay Shore. And it's improved with a one-story multi-tenant building. The property came before planning board last year in connection with the change of use for a physical therapy office in a portion of the building, and the board granted several site plan modifications. As a result of that application, the property received site plan approval in September. Tonight, the applicant is looking to open a restaurant in one of the vacant tenant spaces and utilize an old special permit. The previous special permit listed various site plan and building improvements that conflict with the most recent approved site plan. Therefore, the applicant's requesting a modification of previous special permit conditions in order to comply with this new site plan. Overall, the site will come closer into compliance with today's standards, and the new restaurant will be less intensive than the previously approved restaurant. The new restaurant will be approximately 1,470 square feet with 30 seats where 60 seats was previously approved. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. Questions from the board? Mr. Frugieri?
The new restaurant being proposed, do we know what it is? What type of restaurant?
We don't have the tenant signed yet, but we're probably going to build it out and propose it and work on tenants. And,
Okay, so you know for sure that the 30 seats are going to fit then?
well, we're going to have to find a tenant that does, that knows that those are the requirements. And as you know, as Ms. Wozniak just pointed out and I mentioned earlier, the prior grant in 2008 was for 60 seats. As part of this application, we're going down in intensification down to 30. And of course, as those are going to be the restrictions that are placed on the property that the owner will sign. So we're kind of bound to that.
Okay. Just concerned that it's a restaurant and not more of a bar restaurant.
No, and those are in the special permit conditions as well. So we know that it's not supposed to be a bar or tavern as that's defined within the code. That's understood.
Oh, preference on color will be white. I like the white.
That's three.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No, sir.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brown?
based on the staff report and the reduction in intensity of the use, I'd like to make a motion to grant the application.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Press preference for white.
Second by Mr. Frugieri, expressing a preference for the white. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Understood, and thank you. Have a good evening.
Item 2 on the agenda, Bellamia Cafe Inc., care of Rosanna Niola, PB 2024-003, southwest corner of West Main Street, State Route 27A, and Ocean Avenue, Bay Shore, 0 Ocean Avenue and 136 Main Street. Applicant requests the planning board special permit for a restaurant in the business district pursuant to 68-257.1I. Site plan modifications also requested as part of this application. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nicholas Pfluger of Bowler Pfluger Architects. We're at 85 East Main Street, Bay Shore, New York, 11706. I am the architect on the project. Here on behalf of the applicant. We are here tonight proposing a 65-seat cafe and restaurant called the Bella Mia Cafe. The cafe will encompass what was the old bagel shop on the corner of Ocean Avenue and West Main Street in downtown Bayshore, as well as one vacant tenant space adjacent to the bagel shop. The cafe will feature an Italian-style menu, including items such as pizza, paninis, coffee, espresso, breakfast items, and gelato, just to name a few. With respect to the facade, I understand there has been some questions as to when the completion of the facade would take place. That application was ultimately under another architect. However, I did speak to the construction manager overseeing that work, and they are anticipating a mid-April completion date. And they did start to put the thin brick on the facade, just to make the board aware. The applicant has reviewed all of the conditions for the site modification and special permit and is in agreement with all the conditions, except for having one request on one of the conditions. That one condition being the hours of operation. The applicant would like to open earlier in the morning if the board feels that is a possibility, as they are anticipating serving breakfast items as part of their menu. So we do request the hours of operation be adjusted to 6 a.m. through 12 a.m., which would be a similar opening time to the bagel shop that previously existed. With respect to the parking, there's obviously not much room on the site, so we're only providing 2 parking spaces where 63 parking spaces are required. There's obviously not much we can do with that, but we are providing a new refuse enclosure, along with any other improvements that the engineering department would like to see. In conclusion, we feel that the Bella Mia Cafe will be a great addition to the Bayshore downtown area, and I can take any questions from the board.
I have no cards on this. I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak, but before I do that, I'm glad you brought up the $1 million question I was going to ask, which is what's going on with the facade on the front side of the building.
Yes, I caught wind of that, yes.
It's been sitting that way for quite a while. And
I
certainly, if
understand that.
anything is approved this evening, it's going to be a condition that be completed. I mean, it's sort of been a
Sure.
nice source of Bayshore, which has come around quite nicely. So I'll turn to Ms. Wozniak.
The property is located on the southwest corner of West Main Street and Ocean Avenue in downtown Bayshore, and it's improved with the 2-story mixed-use building that received special permit approval in 2015. Tonight, the applicant is looking to convert the corner tenant space on the first floor to a 2,565 square foot restaurant with 65 seats. With this conversion, the building will consist of 4 apartments on the second floor and the proposed restaurant and 1 vacant retail space on the first floor. Overall, the proposal is consistent with applications typically supported by planning in downtowns. However, the property has yet to complete several improvements that were required from the special permit issued back in 2015. Most notably, the facade improvements. The town has received several complaints regarding the completion of the facade work on this building, which began sometime in 2021 and has yet to be completed. Planning would recommend the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions which require the applicant to complete the facade and site improvements that were originally imposed in 2015.
Ms. Wozniak, to the hours. So you said you're not okay with the hours from 8 to midnight?
Yes, if we could have the hours adjusted from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., just for the purposes of serving breakfast.
Ms. Wozniak, any concerns with that? Any concerns that you have apartments upstairs, correct?
There are going to be apartments proposed on the second floor.
Okay. I'm worried about the late night. The midnight is okay? Okay, so we're okay with the hours then? If you're okay with it, we're okay with the hours.
Great.
So just to go back to, I know you said April, what is the expected completion date of the improvements and the facade?
Mid-April was the timeline that I was given. Given that did start the thin brick installation. That seems feasible as long as they keep going and keep rolling. So, yeah.
So
I mean, what is the square footage of the facade?
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. Again, that was under a different architect that actually did those plans and that design. I mean, if I had a guess, it's maybe 2,000 square feet in brick or so.
Right, so I mean, that's a long period of time to, what else are they doing on the facade?
They were doing new windows up on the second floor. I'm sure some trim and peripheral items, but the main work is really the thin brick.
Right, and if the materials are there, that's not gonna take you a month to do that. So I mean, I would be in favor of the application if we could put a timeline on the facade, because we've been looking at this thing for quite some time.
Sure, and yeah, I believe that the applicant would be absolutely fine with that.
Mr. Ruggieri?
I'm assuming you're going to be doing some interior improvements for the restaurant?
Yes,
and you're gonna
absolutely,
Pull a building permit for that?
absolutely, yes.
I mean, my recommendation would be they don't get a CSC for the interior work until such time as,
Yep, that's actually on the conditions already, so yes.
Any other questions from the board? I would just say that, I mean, I would certainly approve it that way, but I also wouldn't mind reserving this application and bringing it back just for the vote when the modifications are done. Otherwise, it just can drag on and drag on and drag on. They have the approval with no cutoff date on it. So I would rather,
My only concern with that would be, I believe that would hold us up from filing with the building department for the interior modifications for the restaurant itself.
also
And
speed
it-
up on the outside though, if you knew you had to wait on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, under a different architect, so I had no control over that.
we can approve it tonight, but they don't get their building permit for the interior until the facade is completed.
Is that already a condition?
Conditions say they can't get a CO, so I could change it to they can't get a
Building
building permit.
That's probably the compromise then that,
Yeah, I think that's great. As long as we can file and start the process, and they should definitely be finished before that process would get to building permit issuance.
Yeah, because we're not as concerned how long it takes you to finish the inside, but we are concerned about what it's gonna look like on Main Street.
Sure.
it's been an eyesore for a
Understood.
while and
Yes, yes.
no action on it. So to come before us because you want something else and then say, we'll get this done because we want something else is not sort of like how we like to do business.
Sure, understood.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant? Mr. Ruggieri for the motion.
I'll make a motion that we close this public hearing and grant this application subject to the covenants and restrictions that have been drafted by staff with one revision. The issuance of the building permit would be conditioned on the facade improvements being completed.
Motion by Mr. Ruggieri to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions with the additional restriction that the building permit will not be issued until the exterior work is completed. Is there a second by Mr. Matamore? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Item 3 has been adjourned. Item 4 on the agenda is Outer County Construction Corp., CZ 2024-001, south side of Easton Street, approximately 149 feet east of Rayner Avenue, Ronkonkoma, 966 Easton Street. Applicant requests a change of zone from Residence A to Industrial 1 in order to construct a warehouse with office. Applicant further requests a planning board special permit for the overnight parking of registered vehicles pursuant to 68-340.1C. Site plan modifications are required as part of this application. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Solar Sinatra of Germano and Cahill, 4250 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite 275, Holbrook, New York, for the applicant. Today with me, I have Eric Bjornaby of EAB Architectural Designs PLLC, and also Michael Lynch of Lynch Appraisal LTD. We respectfully request that the board acknowledge that Mr. Lynch is previously qualified to testify as a real estate expert before this board on numerous occasions, and that the board recognize him as a qualified real estate expert for the purpose of testifying today. Mr. Lynch's CV is also provided along with his report for your review. Also with me today is Bruce Wakefield on behalf of the owner and Christine Plant. The applicant, Outer County Construction Corp., is a family-owned residential, commercial construction business employing 15 people. They have been operating on the premises for over 20 years and have strong ties to their local community. This proposed project consists of demolishing an existing home currently being used as an office, removing an existing trailer, storage containers, and other areas that are currently being used for storage, and consolidating the company's operations into a new one-story, 5,950 square foot building. Parking will also be formalized on the site. Significant landscaping and 25 feet buffers along residential zones will also be added to the site, where landscaping is currently minimal or non-existent. If approved, this lot will have the most significant landscaping and buffering of any developed lot on the block. This project would result in a vast improvement to the premises. The premises will be visually more appealing, orderly, and buffered from residential uses. The new building will also benefit the community, presumably having a greater assessed value. Moreover, an industrial use, such as the applicant's, is the best fit for this site given the industrial areas around it. So to accomplish this project, the applicant is seeking a change of zone because the site is currently split zone, residential A and industrial 1. So we're asking that the portion that's currently residential A be changed to industrial 1 as an industrial use, as the applicant's is in line with the character of the community. And I'll refer the board to the applicant's Exhibit 1, which is a general aerial view of the neighborhood. So you'll see that the premises is located on the south side of Easton Street. To the north of the premises and across from Easton Street is the Long Island Railroad. Abutting the premises to the west is an industrial zoned lot consisting of a paint shop with office space and what appears to be outdoor storage. On the corner of Raynor Street and Easton Street is an industrial 1 zoned residence. To the east of the premises are 2 residential A lots containing homes, followed by a parcel of vacant land which appears to be used as part of a storage yard on the southwest corner of Easton Street and Marion Street, which is zoned industrial 1. To the south abutting the premises along Beck Street are 3 residential lots with homes. I'll refer the board to our Exhibit 2, which is the Town of Islip zoning map. So as you can see on the zoning map, the premises, which is itself split zone, is in between the middle of industrial zoned lots. The lot would be more appropriate for our applicant's use as it is surrounded by industrial zones, and we're currently going to improve this lot by incorporating the operations of the business solely within the building.
Can I just cut you off for a second?
Yeah.
It's currently zoned Residence A, correct?
It's Residence A and Industrial 1, it's split zone.
Okay. And what is the property being used as now in its entirety?
It's being used by a construction company, so they store their materials and equipment on the lot, and their home is used for an office.
Okay, I'm just
Sure.
pointing out that obviously we're not in compliance.
I'm aware. Thank you. The applicant is also seeking a special permit pursuant to Town Code 68-340.1C for the overnight parking of registered vehicles. We have discussed the application with planning staff and have taken their comments into consideration. After discussion with the applicant is willing to consider a reduction of the number of vehicles that are being sought to be parked overnight. We were initially showing 7 parking stalls for overnight vehicles on the site plan. Site plan modifications are also required with this application. The applicant seeks a relaxation of Town Code 68-340.1 subsection C, which also provides that registered vehicles parked overnight must be set back a minimum distance of 200 feet from any residential use or zone. As depicted on the site plan, the type of vehicles that are proposed to be parked overnight consist of either Sprinter vans, pickup trucks, box truck, and dump trucks, which are shown to be set back 25 feet from a residential A zone and screened by 25 feet of buffer and 6-foot high fencing. The vehicles will be parked on the site from approximately 4 p.m. to 7 a.m. Such vehicles are used for transportation of construction materials, tools, and employees to and from jobs. They wouldn't be creating noise overnight, idling, or going back and forth over the evening hours. We're also seeking a minor relaxation for the landscaping overall requirement. We'd look for a 0.72% relaxation. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Eric Bjornaby, the architect, who can discuss the technical aspects of the site plan.
So just before you leave on that, are you saying you can't meet the 200-foot setback from the residence for the overnight parking, but you want it anyway?
Yes.
And you're willing to consider the town's request that you not have it?
Unfortunately, the length of our site doesn't allow for the parking to be 200 feet setback from the residence A. So that's why we're seeking a relaxation, unless there's some,
I just think it's a major, obviously, stumbling block that you want
sure.
trucks.
No,
parked
we
that close to the
understand that,
residence.
certainly.
Okay.
Good evening, Eric Bjornaby, architect, EAB Architectural Designs, offices at 4250 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite 3150W, Holbrook, New York, 11741. I've been hired by the clients to represent them for the architectural services today. The existing property is an interior lot. It's 150 feet wide by 217 feet deep. So that would be obvious about the 200-foot setback when there's only 217 feet there. The existing lot is 32,549 square feet. The proposed building is 4,996 square foot footprint. It's 115 by 43.45, and we'll have a 4,042 square foot warehouse with 954 square feet of offices with 950 feet square foot mezzanine above. The proposed building would be a total of 5,950 square feet, including the mezzanine. The building meets the industrial 1 zoning setbacks requirements, including a 50-foot front yard, a 10-foot side yard, 10 feet on the west side along the industrial 1 zone, and providing a 96-foot setback on the east side along the residence A where 50 foot would be required. The rear yard is 52 feet where 50 feet is required, and the proposed building would be less than the 35 feet required. The proposed uses would require a one parking space per 1,000 square feet of warehouse and one space per 200 square feet of office, and one parking space for the 600 square feet per 600 square feet of mezzanine area. There are 11 parking spaces required and 11 provided, including one handicap space. There will be 7 trucks to be parked overnight in the rear of the property, including 2 trucks/vans, 2 box trucks. We cannot meet the 200-foot minimum setback of the overnight parking adjustment to the residential districts due to the size of the property, only being 150 by 217 feet. The overnight parking spaces are located on the south and east side of the property beyond the provided 25 feet residential buffer. And proposed residential buffer will also include a 6-foot high fence, double row with the 6-foot evergreens and trees to meet the town's requirements. The proposed 5 trees along the street, as well as 25 feet provided along the residential buffers on the east and south. The proposed front landscaping at 71.63% exceeds the 50% minimum requirement, and the proposed minimum landscaping is at 19.28, where 20% is required, so that's less than 1% relaxation. We do not believe that the proposal would negatively impact the area, and we feel it's appropriate for this zone.
Thank you. I certainly have questions. I mean, if somebody could just speak to the fact that there are open violations on the property. I mean, it's tradition of this board is we will not even consider the application, we'll reserve it, but those violations need to be closed. I mean, you're operating there illegally now up against residences. You're before us this evening asking for something that you can comply with on top of that on the property, which is having overnight vehicles there when you can't meet the setbacks. I have grave concerns about your application. One, that you're before this board with open violations up against residences, the way that that site looks, that you're operating that way.
With
And did
regard,
not make an effort to do anything about that prior to coming in this evening. So go ahead and have your next expert come up and talk about whatever you'd like to speak about, but I have some grave concerns from the onset about this application.
with regards to the violations, the hope was that we can bring the site into compliance because they have been in the community for 20 years, employing people locally. So I've been appearing at the court appearances as of today also, pleading. So
You just don't go and change the property, the use of the property, and then come before us and say, we'll clean it up if you approve it.
understood.
So that's my concern. But please finish your application. We'll go to the staff report. The community wants to speak, and then I have plenty more questions.
Good evening. I'm not sure, I think the planning board was submitted my reports, but we have extra copies. I have it.
Take them, but we have it. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's Michael Lynch, 15 Dewey Street, Huntington, New York. I'm here as the real estate expert on this matter, and I have appeared before this board as well as the zoning board in the past. So I was out at the site back in early January. I prepared my report. There's a number of photographs I have of the subject property as well as the surrounding area in this section of Ronkonkoma. As you know, this is on the south side of Easton Street. It's 150 feet east of Raynor Street. The property is opposite a double row of Long Island Railroad tracks and the town of Brookhaven to the north, as well as an industrial zone that's situated just to the north in the town of Brookhaven. The property is surrounded on its westerly side by an industrial one zone contractor's yard. To the east of it is our single family residences. Then further east at the corner of Marion is an industrial one zone storage yard. The properties to the south are residential on the north side of Beck Street. As indicated, this property is split zone. The westerly rough 1/3 portion is industrial one, and the balance is residence A. The proposal is to construct just under 6,000 square foot warehouse and office that will incorporate and consolidate all the existing buildings that are presently on the site. There's a converted residence that's utilized as a contractor's office. There's a number of assorted garages and sheds on the property. With respect to existing landscaping, other than the area immediately along Easton Street and at the northeasterly portion of the site, just east of and north of the existing residence, the site is virtually devoid of any landscaping, so to speak. So the plan, as was outlined by the architect, is for a densely vegetated and landscaped area of 25 feet along the residential zones to the south. Again, there's virtually no landscaping or buffering to speak of along the southerly property line that abuts the residences to the south. And then to the easterly property line, that as well will have a 25-foot deep landscape buffer along with a double row of cedar fencing. Again, these areas are virtually devoid of any landscaping whatsoever. So with respect to the redevelopment of this site, it's a vast improvement over existing conditions. The proposed building, again, will incorporate all of the existing improvements on the site. We are looking for outside spaces of 7 for the various light to medium trucks that the applicant utilizes in the course of business. The building itself will largely be in the existing industrial one zone. But again, the landscape plan and the fact that we're incorporating all of the existing buildings, operations, et cetera, self-contained within this building overall, it's a vast improvement over, again, existing conditions within the area. In conclusion, should the industrial one zone be approved for the site throughout, as well as the special permit for the outside storage and the variance for the setback of the outside storage, again, it's an impossible requirement to meet due to the depth, the existing depth of the property. However, again, when you consider that there's no buffer to speak of at the south side and the easterly side that abuts the residences, again, it's a plan that's vastly superior to what presently exists. So to sum up, should the zone change be approved, as well as the special permit and the setback, I don't feel it'll have any adverse impact to the surrounding property values. Again, this is a vast improvement over what has existed there for 20 years. It's certainly within the existing pattern of development along Easton Street. This site is not appropriate for a single-family development, again, given existing conditions in the area, especially with the Long Island Railroad directly to the north, as well as the industrial property abutting to the west. Again, I feel that should the zone change be approved, as well as a special permit and the variance for the setback for the outside storage will not have an adverse effect on the community. And I can answer any questions of the board if there may be any.
I think we'll let you finish the report if there's anything else that you'd like to make in the presentation.
Yes, and you do have my report. Thank you.
Is there anything further from the applicant?
The only thing I would reiterate is that this plan, this application is really trying to improve the site. We understand what the site is now, and we're trying to make the site better. And it will look wonderful once this is completed with the extensive vegetation and a brand new building housing everything in it. I think it would be a vast improvement, as everyone has said. And we did receive some support from two residential neighbors, one directly abutting to the west and one, I believe, to the south. So we're happy to take into consideration any of the planning board's comments, and we're very open to that. And if you have any questions as well, we're happy to answer them.
Any question? It's just when you come in with an open violation, you have the last speaker who just said that there is no buffer, but if we approve this, we'll add a buffer. Well, you're required to have the buffer now.
Sure.
So to say, or as he just said, we'll put the buffer in if you approve this, it's not how we operate. If you're required to do something and it can be done right now, it should be done right now.
Understood.
You shouldn't be here telling us only if you approve this, we're going to add what's required to be done. So I'm going to turn to the public speaker, and we'll go to the staff report, and then we'll come back for questions.
Sure.
Certainly want to work with you, but it's certainly the presentation is giving me a little pause. Mr. Brown?
Aziz Khan?
Good evening. My name is Aziz Khan. I'm from Ronkonkoma 953 Backstreet, and I'm representing some of the who is not interested with this project. They are going to all the sign here. They are not interested to do the residential to the commercial, and also I can read here whatever this says. This warehouse will not only bring about disturbance and noise, but also pose potential risks to our children, safety with unfamiliar warehouse employees roaming around. We believe that such industrial development is inappropriate in residential area like ours, where families thrive. Moreover, according to data from U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, warehouse can contribute to increase air pollution due to truck emission and other related activities, which can have adverse health impact on residents living nearby. We value our community's peace and safety above all else, and we believe that it should remain as it is, a place where families can grow without fear of disruption. Therefore, we urge you to reconsider this proposal for the sake of progressive the quality of life in Ronkonkoma. Thank you and be well.
Ms. Khan, can you hand that in? Can we make that part of the record? Yeah, that's what I want, if we can get that as part of the record. Thank you.
Make it part of the record.
Yes, yes.
Anything further, Ms. Khan?
Yes, that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone coming late wish to be heard on this application who did not fill out a card? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes a warehouse with office on an existing split-zone residential property. Currently, the site is improved with a structure CO'd as a single-family dwelling, being utilized as a commercial use with outside storage of construction equipment. The proposed industrial zoning district is generally preferred in areas away from single-family homes and in residences. The comprehensive plan for this area recommends channeling any expansion of industrial uses to the east of Elm Street. The surrounding area consists of a mix of industrial and residential uses. The conceptual site plan shows a 0.7% landscaping relaxation and is compliant with parking. A supplemental buffer is required per the subdivision and land development regulations, where only the standard 25-foot is provided. The overhead doors and outdoor activity will face some of the residences. There is no location on the property where the overnight parking of the trucks would comply with the 200-foot residential setback required by code. The existing hedges provide some screening and should be considered for preservation if feasible. Consideration could be given to reorienting the building and outdoor activity away from the residences or shrinking the building to accommodate a larger buffer. The building elevations show a residential framework, but utilizes materials more typical of an industrial building. To make the building more contextual with the neighborhood, the applicant could provide a double gable roof in the front, a brick base, decorative molding to the windows, horizontal siding, and utilizing neutral colors. Consideration could also be given to preserving some or all of the existing residential structure, again, if feasible. Lastly, as the board has already heard, the applicant submitted a real estate report stating that the proposal would not adversely impact the area or property values. The board will have to consider the noise and increase in intensity to the nearby residences. The staff would recommend that the board reserve decision tonight to review the concerns raised by the public as well as address the concerns with the applicant.
Thank you. Mr. Fujari?
In addition to the concerns that we've voiced already about the property being in violation, and I have a concern with the site layout itself. The traffic movements throughout the site. You have trucks coming in and no place for them to turn around. And it's not only your vehicles, it's emergency vehicles that might be coming. So the fire marshal might have an issue with this as well. But the way I see it is the vehicles come in off the curb cut on Easton, come down, they come back to the back of the building, then they have to back up to get out again. Or if they want to park, they have to back up to park in backwards. And whenever a truck backs up, you got that annoying beeping sound. And that also happens to be adjacent to all the residential homes. So there should be more consideration even for us to consider this application, to have better site circulation from a traffic standpoint. It might be that with the size of the building and the size of the lot, it's just too much on this lot.
We'd be willing to rework the building situation and include circulation so that you could see the truck movements more clearly and also make sure it works for the site. We'd be willing to do that.
Site circulation is clearly an issue here
Sure.
with the site plan.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, no, first off, I would agree with the real estate expert that it wouldn't have any adverse impact on the area as 2 lots over. The industrial one property there, I believe, 30 years ago, was a Superfund site when it was Schumacher wallpaper. And I don't know what the standing is of it today, 30 years later. But I would agree with that. But I think all the faults of this application right now are with what Mr. Fujari pointed out and what our chairman pointed out.
Further questions from the board? Applicant like to add anything further?
Sure, just to address the concerns regarding the warehouse, just to make sure it's clear that this isn't a distribution warehouse. It's basically just going to be a building that houses the materials, construction materials, lumber, siding, et cetera, that the company uses on a day-to-day basis. So it's not an Amazon where trucks are in and out of the premises making deliveries. That's not what we're trying to create here. And I do believe that the applicant would like to say a few words to close.
Thank you for seeing us today. We did pay all of our fines this morning, actually, in the court hearing. We've been working on this for years, going back and forth. So we're trying to do everything that is asked of us to make and improve the lot. So please understand, if you have any suggestions, we're willing to change anything, but we've been here forever. I was born in Ronkonkoma, my company's in Ronkonkoma, I don't want to leave. And we're willing to do anything to stay here. My dad's been here, he owns the lot, and I own the business. So we're trying to make this better. We've been at Alyssa's fighting for us in court every single day. I paid my fines this morning. We're doing everything we can to just remain in the area. It would not increase traffic. Nothing has a backup besides the two things. If we don't need to have those vehicles, we won't have those vehicles. Everything will be housed inside, so less noise, no traffic. Children will be safe. There is no children over in our area at all. This means a lot to us. Ronkonkoma means a lot to us. We do a lot for the community, and I really would love to stay. So I just want you to know that that's how we're here.
Thank you. Anything further from the applicant? Come on up.
Thank you for listening. I'm Bruce Wakefield. I'm the owner of the property. So basically, I bought this property in 2007 from somebody who had a car business there. They were moving cars, storing cars, so the property's been industrial in the beginning of time. So it's always been that way. When I moved in, I said to him, I said, this is what we're going to do, a little construction business. So we have a small construction business. It's not a large construction business, but we do a lot for the community. We do a lot for the town of Islip, for the airport. We do a lot for the run around the lake. We organize a run around the lake with the Rotary clubs. So we're involved in a lot of stuff with the community, the cleanup of the lake. It's a lot of volunteer work. So it's not that we're doing anything that's impacts any neighbors. There is no real noise on the property because they come in and they leave and they go to work. They're out all day long. If storing of materials, there's very little materials going to be stored on the property because we'd rather pick them up from the warehouses, supply houses. We don't want to store a lot of materials. It's just to keep more vehicles inside so then they're out in to comply with the town. Like I said, we've been there for 20 years on that property working, and there was no complaints. The only complaint was from a garbage company came by and they said, listen, some of that garbage can't go there, but we already have our own dumpster on the property. So all of our debris is already taken care of. Like I said, there has not been any complaints, and we're just trying to comply with or increase the value of the property and make it look a little neater by doing this upgrade. But staying on the property and doing the work the way we do, if you would like us to make some small alterations and stay where we are and just continue business the way we're doing it, give us some suggestions and we'll do that. Rather than do the big building increase. It's going to be a huge expense for us. But if that's what's required, that's what we would do. All right, appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have nothing further.
I would just say, again, we're willing to work with you.
Okay, great.
However, so that being important and being involved with the community is great. Those buffers could go be in there already. There's nothing stopping you from putting a buffer against your immediate neighbors or residences and being good neighbors to them. I mean, that could start immediately. The open violations we can look at and make sure they've been closed because that's a consideration that we take into account before we'll consider something before this board. So again, willing to work with you, but again, we need to start by coming into code with what you have now, buffers and things like that against the neighbor residential properties would be helpful. There is a petition here signed by at least 5 of your neighbors, at least 3 adjoining that property and 2 across the street that we have presented to us this evening. So there are some concerns from the neighbors. Not saying it won't work, but we need to take that into consideration, maybe even to sit down with the neighbors and talk about the buffers and the things that would work for them to make this work.
Sure.
So I think that's where Out Planning has some suggestions. I think you should work with them and see what you can come up with.
Of course.
Is there anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant? If
No.
not, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Moriarty.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to close the hearing this evening and reserve decision.
Motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brown. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. And I would just ask Mr. Colgan, not as part of this application, but looking at the paperwork that was submitted by the applicant tonight, I noticed the property to the east is probably, property to the west. It's reserved. Oh, the application is reserved, not granted, if I said granted. I would just note for the record, if you would speak to code enforcement about the property to the west, because again, up against residential properties, if it's not in compliance, we should make sure it's going to go into compliance. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Jeff Kelly, Senior VP, V1 ISP 3 LLC, SP 2022-053, west side of Smithtown Avenue, 415 feet south of Marconi Avenue, Ronkonkoma, 2100 Smithtown Avenue. Applicant requests a parking relaxation and permission to locate overhead doors in the front yard facing a right-of-way in connection with the demolition of an existing office building and the construction of a new warehouse building. Good evening.
Good evening. Garrett Gray, Weber Law Group, 290 Broad Hollow Road, Melville, for the applicant. Joining me this evening is Joe Colucci, Senior Engineer at Nelson and Pope, Venture One's engineers. The subject property is located at 2100 Smithtown Avenue in the hamlet of Ronkonkoma, also known as Section 106.03, Block 1, Lot 5.1 on the Suffolk County tax map. The lot is approximately 9.01 acres with a frontage of approximately 546.57 feet on Smithtown Avenue and is presently zoned Industrial 1. Subject property is completely surrounded by other industrial properties and is across the street from MacArthur Airport. Applicant plans to demolish the existing one-story office building and construct a new state-of-the-art 137,470 square feet industrial building. The applicant is a real estate private equity fund managing, developing, and operating, specializing in the industrial property sector. Its headquarters in Chicago. It's been targeting opportunities in Illinois, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, owning and managing over 7 million square feet and controlling over 1,100 acres of land. The principals of the applicant have over $6 billion of industrial investment and development experience. This is our fourth foray into the New York market. The first two were industrial warehouses on Vetch Memorial Highway in Bohemia and Ronkonkoma. The third is one on Wireless Boulevard in Hauppauge. With respect to the two other industrial warehouses in the town of Islip, this board granted special permits and relaxations for both. They required special permits because they were both in the ICD district. The fact that we have selected Islip as the town within which to continue, in which they continue to feel is the best place to establish the New York cornerstone does speak volumes. They've established working relationships with all levels of town government, as well as members of the planning and engineering department who sit here tonight. Today we are seeking a small parking relaxation to allow 206 stalls, with 12 of them being land banked, where 220 stalls are required. This board granted a much larger parking relaxation for our Bohemia warehouse, where 195 stalls were required, and this board allowed us to provide 156, with 48 of them being land banked. And with respect to our Ronkonkoma warehouse, this board granted permission to land bank 10% of the parking spaces. Also, given the shape of the lot, as well as the fact that there are two front yards, we are also looking for permission to have the loading docks in the front yard. It's the front yard on Haynes Court, not Smithtown Avenue. And again, we're just surrounded by industrial property and would not really bother anybody. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Gray, for your concise report. We're going to turn to Mr. Gonzalez for a staff report and see if we have any questions.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an industrial one zone, 9-acre parcel, as Mr. Gray pointed out, currently improved with a 112 square foot office and warehouse, originally CO'd in 1981, with alterations as recent as 2004. The building is currently in the process of being demolished, and this will be for a new state-of-the-art industrial warehouse and associated site improvements. This is, per the applicant, a spec build with no signed leases for the tenants as of now. The project requires a minor parking relaxation, 220 stalls required, 206 provided, which includes 12 land banked parking stalls. That's about almost 6.5%. And based on the use, staff does not foresee any parking issues. And if the additional 12 stalls are needed in the future, they can always be built out through site plan approval. The other relaxation is the permission to locate loading docks and associated doors within the front yard facing the right-of-way. None are facing Smithtown Avenue, which takes up a majority of the property's frontage. Each one is insulated to the interior of the site facing the cul-de-sac of Haynes Court, which is an industrial right-of-way with other warehouses and commercial uses. There are various measures of green screening to mitigate the visual impacts. However, not all doors can be effectively screened when accounting for the ingress-egress to the site from the cul-de-sac. As that area is of similar use types with no residential, staff has no issue with that request. So based on the staff report, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Just that we have no problem with the attached conditions.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brown,
I would make a motion based on Mr. Gonzalez's staff report to grant the application.
motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application subject to the covenant's restrictions. Is there a second? By Ms. Cruz, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, application is granted.
Thank you very much.
Do we have a motion? There we go. Mr. Matamore's motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you.